Okay, today I want to talk about fat loss through the lens of stress. So hopefully this is a bit of a different take to what you've heard before, because most of the time the stuff I hear when it comes to fat loss and losing weight in general, especially around losing stomach fat, belly fat, is just to do more, to do higher intensity, to eat less, and to generally put in more effort and really to just stress yourself out as much as possible in order to create those changes. Now, I actually think this is the complete wrong approach for a lot of people, and here's why. It all has to do with your central nervous system, so that's your CNS for short, and this essentially is a system which senses and regulates your stress response as a human being in all aspects of your life. So you can think of this like your battery pack. Your CNS is like your personal battery pack, and it is recharged by doing relaxing activities like low intensity cardio, sleeping, eating food, walking, and a whole bunch of other activities. This could be stuff like sitting in a nice field or taking a relaxing swim, or just kind of relaxing with friends, that sort of thing. Now, this battery pack is going to get used and challenged by more stressful activities like your heavy lifting, like your high intensity fitness classes, like job stress, like any kind of thing that challenges your body to react or adapt in a certain way. All of these activities that I've just mentioned, which are going to ramp up the nervous system, which are going to challenge that battery pack, could be called stress. Okay, so none of them are necessarily good or bad. Obviously, we might feel like something like job stress is bad, but something like exercise stress, which is good, could be just as stressful to the body. Now, we don't want to cut out all the stress. You want to be a resilient human who can deal with these stresses and then recover from them. The problem is when we're dealing with a lot of stress and we're not recovering from it, we don't then want to add even more stress because we're just digging ourselves into a hole, not getting better, more resilient, stronger and fitter. So when we have these experiences of stress or a challenge, our body will release a hormone, or in fact a bunch of hormones, to help us in that situation. Now the issue is when we're in that state for too long, so we can't come out of that stress state and the hormones are lingering, then they can affect how we are going to deal with the food that comes into our body. Are we going to use it for fuel and energy in that stress environment? Or now that we're out of that stress environment, we have nowhere to use that energy, are we going to store it on our bodies as fat? Are we going to store it in the hips and the thighs? Are we going to store it around the midsection? Then it's also, are we going to be able to build muscle, or are we not going to have the hormones required to build the muscle, and are we instead going to be more likely to struggle with building muscle? Now, it's not to say that any of these things are absolute. It's not to say that if you get stressed once in a while that you're going to never build muscle and you're going to always gain fat. That's not the case at all. So it doesn't have to be something that we're really worried about. It's just a case of, can we move into that stress kind of environment and out of that stress environment fluidly on a spectrum, rather than being constantly stuck in a state of stress, which can cause some problems. So here is your first tip for helping reduce fat around the midsection, and that's going to be to reduce your stress levels. A really good way to do this if you don't want to exercise less, or you don't want to skip out on your high intensity exercises, is to add a 5 or 10 minute cool down to the end of your workouts, which will jumpstart that relax process and get you in a recovery mode. The cool down could include something like 5 to 10 minutes of really easy, gentle cardio, like a brisk walk or a gentle run, followed by a little bit of stretching and some breathing exercises. Maybe a more relaxing class on that day, like yoga or going for a swim. Now, let's talk quickly about building muscle. So this is so overlooked for a couple of reasons, but it can have such a great effect on building that physique that you really want, and it's going to push you into later life being way more resilient, strong, and just capable of doing your daily activities and any sport and exercise that you want to do. And it's going to give you that lean and toned appearance that you're wanting. Now, often building muscle isn't easily achieved in classes because you're not really sure what weights to use, everything moves really fast, and it's hard to kind of settle on a weight that you like using. You're probably doing different stuff each week, so you're not able to progress on the weights that you did last time, which is essential for building muscle. So you can do it in classes, it's totally possible, but it also might be nice to add some extra weight training sessions focusing on slower, heavier, more controlled movements to build that muscle that you're hoping to build if you can't do it in classes. So there's your second tip: focus on building muscle, not just doing high intensity workouts. Okay, so your third tip, which isn't actually groundbreaking at all, is to focus on sleeping more. And I know you don't want to hear it. Hey, I'm a PT, I wake up at the crack of dawn, I'm back home probably after many of you have already gone to bed, and that's not a flex, it's not a good thing. Okay, I understand it is hard to get enough sleep in today's day and age, but you really have to try and work on that if you can. Even if it's having a nap here and there, even if it's getting 1 hour extra or half an hour extra every single night, this is going to again help with reducing those stress hormones from lingering around and causing you to retain fat around the midsection. There's 2 more ways then that I'm going to try and convince you to get more sleep with regards to fat loss. And the first one is then, if you are tired, then you're far less likely to be walking, fidgeting and generally moving as much as you would be if you're rested. Now, your non-exercise activity is such a big contributor to actually shifting weight and to being generally healthy. And the second thing then is that when we are tired, we're far more likely to overeat to even to about 500 calories a day, which is a huge proportion of your daily intake. And if you are trying to be in a calorie deficit, then that's going to have a huge impact on how difficult it is for you to stick within that range just because you're tired. So your third tip is to sleep more, which isn't crazy, isn't new, but it will make so much more of an impact than you think. Okay, finally, let's chat food. So firstly, you've got to be eating enough to recover and eating enough to fuel your workouts. We want the workouts to pop, we want to recover from the workouts so that the future workouts can be just as good, right? Now, I know this can be a tricky mindset to get into when you want to be in a calorie deficit, meaning that you want to be eating less than you're using on a daily basis in order to trigger fat loss to happen. Now, that is necessary for fat loss, but it doesn't mean that we want to go crazy and decrease our food by loads. A calorie deficit of somewhere between 150 and 300 is more than enough to result in fat loss. And in fact, going way over that, cutting your calories drastically down, is more likely to lead to you either not sticking to it or just feeling really miserable and really drained and eventually just wanting to give up, or slowing your movement down and moving less overall to counteract that, as your body just doesn't have the energy to move. It is so much better to go more conservative with the calorie target that you set yourself and to be able to stick to it and then adjust a little bit if it's not working, than to go crazy, not stick to it and feel like you're failing and also just be miserable and drained all the time. If you are doing a calorie deficit, I strongly advise you to consider the other points that I raised earlier in the video before focusing on the calorie deficit, because they will make a big difference. So that's all on this topic for now. I'm aware that this video could have been like 45 minutes long, but I wanted to keep it short and sweet so you can digest this in your lunch break or wherever you're watching. So just to recap, I want you to focus on eating enough but within a calorie deficit. I want you to focus on sleeping enough. I want you to focus on adding low intensity, low stress movement or activities. That doesn't have to be movement, but low stress activities to your training. I want you to focus on building muscle and to consider stress as part of your strategy to lose belly fat in a sustainable way. That is everything. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you on the next video.